The laughter of the world. Every great story begins with doubt. Every dreamer, every visionary, every soul that dared to rise faced one common trial, the laughter of the world. This man was no different. He carried within his heart a vision, a quiet knowing that his life was meant for something greater. But when he spoke of his dream, when he dared to share his plans, people did not listen with encouragement. They responded with laughter. They laughed because they could not see what he saw. They laughed because they could not imagine what he imagined. To them, he was nothing but an ordinary man, daring to believe in extraordinary things, and because they could not understand his courage, they tried to drown it in mockery. His friends laughed at him. They said, "Why waste your time? Be practical. Do what everyone else is doing." His family doubted him. They whispered, "He doesn't know what he's doing. He's chasing illusions." Strangers dismissed him with casual cruelty. "He will never make it. Look at him. He doesn't have what it takes." The weight of that laughter was heavy. It echoed in his mind when he went to bed. It followed him when he walked alone. It threatened to weaken his spirit, to convince him that maybe the crowd was right. Because laughter, when it comes from many voices, can feel like truth. And yet, he refused to surrender. What the world did not know was that every laugh only sharpened his resolve. Every insult became fuel. Every mocking word became a reminder that his vision was his alone, and he did not need their approval to pursue it. He realized something powerful. People laugh not because you are wrong, but because your courage reminds them of their own fear. Your dreams remind them of the ones they abandoned. Your fire exposes the ashes of their own. And so, instead of supporting you, they mock you, hoping to bring you down to their level. This man chose a different path. Instead of defending himself, instead of wasting energy explaining his dream to those who could never understand it, he embraced silence. He decided that the laughter of the world would not break him, it would build him. He understood that the loudest voices are often the emptiest, and that true strength is proven not in arguments, but in actions. So he smiled quietly as they laughed. He walked away, not in defeat, but in wisdom. He learned to stand in the storm without seeking shelter in their approval. Because deep down, he knew something they did not. Laughter fades, but results remain. And that is where his story truly begins. Not with applause, not with support, but with ridicule. Because every great transformation starts in the face of mockery. Every champion is first misunderstood. Every light is laughed at before it is celebrated. The laughter of the world was not the end of his story. It was the fuel that would ignite it. The power of silence. Silence is often misunderstood. To the world, it looks like weakness. They say, "He has no answer. She has no defense. They must be defeated." But those who walk the deeper path know the truth. Silence is not emptiness. It is strength in its purest form. The man who was mocked discovered this secret. At first, he felt the sting of every insult, the burn of every laugh. He wanted to explain himself, to shout back, to prove to them that he was not the fool they believed him to be. But then, a realization came. Words do not change minds that are closed, and arguments do not awaken hearts that are asleep. Why waste the fire of your soul trying to light those who refuse to see? So he chose silence. Not silence born of defeat, but silence born of wisdom. He understood that the energy he might waste in defending his dream could be invested in building it. The time he could lose in fighting with critics could instead be used in strengthening himself. And so his silence became a weapon, not of destruction, but of creation. In that silence, something powerful began to happen. His mind became clearer. His focus grew sharper. Without the noise of arguments, without the distraction of trying to prove himself, he finally had the space to hear the most important voice of all, the one within. That inner voice, the quiet whisper of intuition, of higher purpose, of destiny, grew louder in the stillness. And he realized the world's laughter meant nothing compared to the guidance of his own soul. Silence also became his shield. While others revealed their jealousy, their bitterness, their insecurity through constant words, he stayed hidden in stillness. He did not reveal his plans. He did not advertise his struggles. He let the noise of the world pass by, while he worked quietly, invisibly, in the shadows. Like a seed buried beneath the soil, his growth was unseen, but unstoppable. And here lies the power. Silence protects what is sacred. When you keep your vision within, you protect it from the contamination of doubt. When you keep your plans quiet, you shield them from sabotage. The man knew this truth well. Dreams are fragile in their early stages. They must be nurtured in private before they can bloom in public. The world confused his silence for weakness. They thought he had given up. They believed their laughter had crushed him. But in reality, he was transforming. His silence was not empty. It was full of discipline, of growth, of unseen victories. And when the time came, his silence would speak louder than their laughter ever could. Because silence, when combined with faith and action, has a voice more powerful than any argument. It is the voice of results. So remember this: do not fear silence. Do not run from it. Embrace it. Because in silence you will discover clarity. In silence you will discover strength. And in silence you will discover that the greatest answers are never shouted. They are lived. The secret work in the dark. The world saw nothing but silence from the man they mocked. They thought his stillness was surrender. They assumed he had given up, that their laughter had broken him. But while they laughed, he worked. While they mocked, he built. And while they wasted their energy watching him, he was pouring his energy into transforming himself. This is the secret few understand. The greatest victories are forged in the dark, not in the spotlight, not in the applause, not under the gaze of the crowd. True transformation happens when no one is watching. It happens in the lonely hours, in the quiet nights, in the hidden sacrifices no one will ever see. The man understood this. Every evening, when the world fell asleep, he was awake. While others filled their time with gossip, distraction, and noise, he filled his time with growth. He studied, he learned, he trained his mind and disciplined his habits. He was not chasing quick rewards. He was building a foundation that would last. In the darkness of his solitude, he discovered something powerful. Consistency is stronger than talent. He didn't need to be the smartest, the richest, or the most gifted. He only needed to show up every single day and keep moving forward. Brick by brick, step by step, he was building a version of himself that the world had never seen. And that's the beauty of working in silence. No one sees your struggle, but one day they will see your results. No one witnesses the nights of doubt, the battles with fear, the quiet tears of exhaustion. But one day, when the fruit of your effort blooms, they will stand in awe, and they will never truly understand the price you paid in the dark. The man also learned that the dark is not punishment, it is preparation. Just like a seed must remain buried in the soil before it can rise into the sunlight, he too had to endure his hidden season. In the soil of silence, his roots grew deep, his character strengthened, his resilience hardened. Without this hidden work, his future success would not survive. Most people fail because they want recognition too soon. They want applause for effort before results. But the man refused this temptation. He didn't need validation. He didn't need the world to notice. He only needed to keep going. He knew that when the time was right, his growth would be undeniable. So he worked. He worked while being doubted. He worked while being ridiculed. He worked while being ignored. And in the process, he became unshakable. Because the dark no longer scared him, it became his sanctuary. And one day, the world would discover what he already knew. That the hours spent in silence, the sacrifices made in solitude, the relentless commitment in the shadows were not wasted. They were the hidden foundation of a life that was about to shine, the fire of inner belief. There comes a point in every silent struggle when the noise of the world fades away and the only voice left is your own. For the man who was laughed at, this moment came quietly, but it changed everything. One night, as he sat in solitude, he realized, I don't need them to believe in me. I only need me to believe in me. That single realization lit a fire inside him. A fire brighter than any praise, stronger than any support, louder than any applause. Because true belief is not borrowed, it is born from within. The world had mocked him, doubted him, and dismissed him. And at first, those voices stung. They echoed in his mind like chains, trying to hold him down. But in silence, he learned to replace those voices with a greater truth. I am not defined by their laughter. I am defined by my belief in what I can become. This is the power of inner belief. It transforms weakness into strength, rejection into fuel, and doubt into determination. The man no longer needed the validation of others. He no longer cared if they laughed or ignored him. Because when your belief in yourself burns brightly enough, the world's opinion becomes irrelevant. Belief became his compass. It gave him direction when the path was unclear. It gave him courage when fear tried to whisper in his ear. It gave him energy when his body wanted to quit. Belief is not a luxury. It is the foundation of every dream that has ever been achieved. Think about it. Every invention, every masterpiece, every breakthrough began as an idea in someone's mind. No one else could see it. No one else believed in it. But the creator's belief made it real. The Wright brothers believed in flight when the world laughed. Edison believed in light when failure surrounded him. And this man too believed in himself when all he had was silence and shadows. His belief became a fire that refused to die. Ryan insult thrown at him only fed the flames. Every moment of doubt became fuel. Instead of breaking him, the mockery refined him. He learned that the greatest victories are born from those who refused to stop believing, even when the entire world stood against them. But here's the truth. Belief is not passive. It is not just sitting and wishing. Belief demands action. It demands commitment. The man didn't just believe in his dream. He lived it every single day. His belief pushed him to wake up earlier, work harder, and stay focused when others were distracted. His belief didn't make the journey easier, but it made it possible. And slowly, his fire grew. It warmed his heart. It strengthened his will. It carried him through every obstacle. Until one day, he realized that the very laughter that once tried to drown him had become meaningless. Because his belief was no longer fragile, it was unshakable. This is the lesson. When you ignite the fire of belief within yourself, nothing can extinguish it, not doubt, not rejection, not fear. Because belief is not just thinking you can, it is knowing you will. The turning point. Every journey has a moment when the tides begin to shift. For the man who was once laughed at, that moment didn't come with applause or recognition. It came quietly, almost unnoticed, yet it marked the birth of a new chapter in his life. After months, even years, of silent work, something inside him changed. He was no longer the man defined by other people's laughter. He was no longer the dreamer mocked for daring to hope. Through discipline, persistence, and the fire of belief, he had transformed into someone stronger, sharper, and more unshakable than ever before. The turning point is never about the world seeing you differently. It is about you seeing yourself differently. And that's exactly what happened. He looked in the mirror one day and realized, I am not who I used to be. His shoulders carried resilience. His eyes reflected determination. His spirit was unbreakable. The world had not changed, but he had. This shift became the foundation of everything that followed. Where once he had been hesitant, he was now confident. Where once he doubted, he now trusted his own abilities. Every step forward felt like a declaration, I will not be broken. And then, almost naturally, the results of his hidden work began to surface. Skills that he had sharpened in silence began to shine. Ideas that had once seemed impossible began to take shape. Opportunities that once slipped through his fingers now found their way to him. It wasn't magic. It was the reward of relentless effort finally meeting the right moment. But make no mistake, the turning point wasn't just about achievement. It was about freedom. Freedom from the need for approval. Freedom from the weight of mockery. Freedom from the chains of self-doubt. When he finally understood his worth, the laughter of the crowd lost all power. They could laugh, they could doubt, they could gossip, but none of it mattered anymore. Ironically, it was at this stage that the same people who once mocked him began to notice him differently. They saw the confidence in his stride, the clarity in his vision, the strength in his actions. Some were confused, some were silent, and some even began to respect him. But by then, their opinions no longer mattered. The man had already won the battle within himself, and that victory was greater than any recognition they could give. This is the truth of every great transformation. The turning point does not happen when the world applauds you. It happens when you finally stop needing them to. It happens when your identity shifts from being defined by others to being defined by your own unshakable belief and relentless action. The man's turning point was not the end of his journey. It was the beginning of something far greater. It was the moment when his silence began to roar, not through words, but through undeniable results. And so, the man who was once laughed at had quietly stepped into a new reality, one where he no longer chased approval, but simply walked in his purpose. That was the moment his destiny began to unfold, the victory of silence. The day eventually came when the man's silence spoke louder than every insult, louder than every doubt, louder than every laugh that had once surrounded him. He did not have to argue. He did not have to prove. He did not even have to explain. His results, his growth, his transformation, these became the voice of his victory. The people who once laughed now stood in disbelief. The man they dismissed as a failure had risen with strength, clarity, and success that could no longer be ignored. Their words had been sharp, but his silence had been sharper. Their noise had been loud, but his persistence had been louder. This was the victory of silence, not in empty revenge, but in undeniable proof. Silence had been his shield, protecting him when his dream was fragile. Silence had been his weapon, cutting through distractions and keeping him focused. And now, silence became his victory, because it revealed the truth without him having to utter a single word. His life itself became the answer. But this victory wasn't about proving the mockers wrong. It was about proving himself right. That's the deeper truth. The man realized that the greatest joy didn't come from silencing others, but from fulfilling the promise he had once made to himself, the promise not to quit, not to break, not to let the laughter of others define his destiny. The crowd that mocked him could no longer touch him because he had already risen above them. Their laughter, once painful, had become irrelevant. He didn't need to remind them of their words. Life had reminded them for him. His success was not born out of bitterness, but out of purpose. And that is why his victory was so complete. It was pure, powerful, and eternal. Silence had also taught him humility, because he knew that had he reacted in anger, had he fought to prove himself too soon, he might have lost focus. But by choosing stillness, he gained strength. By choosing patience, he gained wisdom. By choosing silence, he allowed time to reveal the truth in a way arguments never could. The victory of silence is this. It allows your growth to be undeniable, your results to be unshakable, and your life to be unanswerable. The people who once mocked will have no words left, and those who doubted will have no choice but to respect what you've become, even if they never admit it aloud. The man's story is not just his own. It is a reminder for anyone walking through laughter, doubt, or rejection. You do not need to fight every critic. You do not need to answer every insult. You do not need to explain yourself to anyone. All you need is the discipline to work in silence, the belief to stay unshakable, and the patience to let time reveal your truth. And when that truth arrives, when your silence blossoms into undeniable results, you will understand what the man understood. That silence, when guided by faith and action, always wins. This was his greatest victory, not because the world finally stopped laughing, but because he no longer needed them to. Every story has a moment where the lessons crystallize, where the struggle reveals its meaning, and where the journey comes full circle. For the man who once endured the sting of laughter and the weight of doubt, that moment was his victory in silence. But this story is not just about him. It is about you, about anyone who has ever been ridiculed for daring to dream, about anyone who has ever felt the isolation of walking a path no one else could understand. The laughter of others may seem powerful at first. It may echo in your mind, it may shake your confidence, and it may tempt you to quit. But as this man's life showed, laughter is temporary, silence is eternal. The world's opinions fade, but the truth of your growth, the evidence of your effort, and the results of your persistence cannot be erased. His journey teaches us three profound lessons. First, you do not need to defend yourself to anyone. Arguments will drain you, explanations will distract you, but silence will protect you. Save your energy for building, not for battling with voices that refuse to see your worth. Second, greatness is born in the shadows. The work you do in secret, the sacrifices no one sees, the discipline you maintain when the world is not watching, that is where your future is written. And third, belief is the fire that carries you forward. Without it, silence feels like defeat. With it, silence becomes the soil of transformation. The man's triumph was not about humiliating those who mocked him. It was about liberating himself from their power. He discovered a truth far greater than revenge, that the sweetest victory is not proving others wrong, but proving yourself right. And when you reach that level of inner strength, you no longer need applause, validation, or recognition. Your life itself becomes your loudest voice. Think about it. How many lives are broken because people waste their energy fighting noise instead of focusing on growth? How many dreams die because someone chose to listen to laughter instead of their own belief? And how many destinies are abandoned because silence felt too lonely, when in reality, it was preparing them for greatness? This man chose differently. He embraced the silence. He endured the laughter. He worked in the dark, believed in himself, and waited with patience. And because of that, he transformed his life completely. His silence became his strength. His results became his response. His destiny became his proof. And now, as you listen to his story, you are faced with the same choice. Will you let the laughter of others define you, or will you let your silence shape you? Will you argue with doubters, or will you outgrow them? Will you quit in the face of rejection, or will you rise with unshakable belief? The answer is in your hands. But remember this. One day, if you stay true, if you persist, if you believe, your silence will roar louder than their noise ever could. Just like the man who was once laughed at, you too can rewrite your story. And when that day comes, you will understand that silence was never your weakness. It was always your greatest strength.